I want to talk to you about my friend Charlie Crawford. He's a 10-time NFR qualifier.
Charlie Crawford, time to just shake it out and win. Got it on him fast, set
there
up.
We are.
Here's a dead
nice
money
run.
lead. You betcha 3-8.
That's an absolute perfect run. Timing was perfect from the time the first swing is up. He's got the control. Charlie made it happen by being timed up with his horse with the steer, and being able to not just rope, but to pick that steer's head up without changing the momentum for the heeler at all.
We know his beautiful wife, Jackie, all three of their beautiful children, the founder of the Liberty and Loyalty Foundation, which this year will exceed $1 million raised for military and first responders. I've said it 1,000 times. Charlie, it's time to rope, nod and ride, whip and spur. I want to welcome you to the Charlie Crawford Podcast. Let's ride.
Ropers, are you ready to step up your game? My online course, The Basics of Roping, is built for beginners, but packed with tools to help ropers of all levels sharpen their skills. With over 2 hours of instruction, frame-by-frame swing breakdowns, when to turn your hand over to keep your loop open, when and where to let go of your rope so you can get the horns in the middle of that loop, over 15 dummy drills to simulate real-life runs, you'll have everything you need to improve. Go to charliecrawford.training and follow the link under the course tab to get started today. All right, everybody, I'm excited today. We have Marty Becker. Marty Becker's a 2-time NFR qualifier in the calf roping. Also very well known for his heeling back in the days. I know that Marty, you was one of the fill-in guys. I remember when I first got my card. And what I mean by that is like if a header was at the rodeo and his heeler didn't show up or got turned out or whatever, you would be able to fill him in. And you was just an iceman of a heeler and heck of a career, great coach. And Marty B, just excited to have you on, man. Thanks for coming on.
Charlie, thank you so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to going through some cool stuff here today with you.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about how you got your start up there in Canada. In my opinion, if you come from Canada and you make it big time, that's a lot of effort that was put in to come from up there, because you know how hard it has to be to take calves and haul them to an indoor barn. And, you know, what you guys probably only rope outside, probably a few months out of the year. And so the effort that it takes to come from up there and be successful is a feat in itself, I think. And then love to talk about your career and love to talk about the heeling. You're a great horse trainer, a great coach. And then not only that too, love to talk about you have 2 kids that are making a good name for themselves. They're doing really good in the age brackets that they're in. You know, that hard line between coaching and parenting. A lot of parents that listen to this podcast, I know they're going to be glued in to hear the coaching strategy you have to be a coach and a parent. So those are tough balances to have. But man, Many Berries, Canada, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So how did you get your start when you first got started?
I grew up on a ranch down in southeastern Alberta, right on the Montana border, and just grew up in the saddle. Spent a lot of time with my dad out there ranching, and my dad and mom, they rodeoed a little bit, and that's how I got my start roping. And we just did a lot of treating cattle out in the open prairie, and got a start out there, and then just built the foundation in the arena. And dad gave me a lot of good horsemanship tips, and he was really a coach in itself. He liked to go slow, control the runs, that type of scenario. And I really learned a lot of that just treating cattle out in the open prairie.
Yeah, there's a lot of calf roping skills that can be mastered ranching.
There is. You know,
between branding calves and doctoring some calves out there by yourself, there's a lot of techniques and a lot of just eye coordination and learning how to read cattle.
Yes, sir.
You know, I remember some of the healers that was really good behind me. I remember a lot of them were dang good cowboys. Mm-hmm. And I, in my opinion, I credit a lot of that to branding.
I think so too.
The shots he had to pull off.
Yep, I think so too. It's like, you know, my dad, we'd be riding through some cattle, and there'd be, you know, we'd run across a sick one, and he wasn't just going to just tear after him. He was just like, okay, let's just, you know, sort him out from the herd and just kind of ease him along. And we might just trot the air out of him for a little while and then ease into him, let the cow come to him. And then we'd rope and doctor him. And same thing in the branding pen, it's like, don't just rush into the herd. It's like walk through there, set a shot up, and, there's cattle everywhere right there, but you're just picking a shot and easing through it. And I think that's where I get a lot of my patience that I learned over the years, just through, like you say, the ranching and the branding. I think that's so important.
What calf roping and heeling was definitely your strengths. What was the appeal in those two events?
Just growing up, I watching, Roy Cooper on old videotapes, and, the rodeo scene obviously isn't like it is now, where we can watch all these rodeos on TV, but they still showed the NFR, on TV and magazines and that kind of stuff. And you see these guys out there rodeo, and you just kind of get to following a few of them. And it was that's how I kind of got a start on, mentoring. I'd like to go do that, and that's where the calf roping and the heeling and that's what my dad kind of got me started in too. That's the two events that he used. So
did you grow up through the high school rodeo ranks? Did you go to college?
I didn't go to college.
High school rodeo?
Way it was set up back then when I was growing up, you would have had to go into the high school rodeo. You would have had to go rodeo the whole part of Canada. You'd have to travel everywhere.
That's a lot of rodeo.
A lot of rodeo.
Got it.
And so I just basically, how I got my start was, it's like nowadays you would call it a play day. They had a team roping deal, and then some breakaway, calf roping, barrel racing, that kind of scenario. And that's how I kind of got my start. And then I went straight into the amateur rodeos from there. That was kind of what I had for an opportunity. And
then when did you buy your card? How old were you?
I was 18.
18.
Yep.
And then was there some guys that you mentored with? Was there some guys you traveled with that helped you along the way? Because I know what it's like, when you go from, like I did the high school rodeo to the jackpots. Well, then when I bought my card or my permit, there was guys that I roped with that were older than me. They knew the tricks of the trade. They knew where to enter, and, kind of mentored me. When you got out there, who were some of the guys that helped you, and who'd you travel with?
Well, I think that's such an important process to go through right there, with who you get in with, who's going to help you along the way. So when I was amateur rodeo, and there I amateur rodeo for like 5 years, and become really good friends with Darren Shaw. And he was amateur in the same time as me, and then we both bought our pro card in Canada the same year in 93. And so Darren said, "Hey, let's travel together. I'll help you how to enter." He knew all the ins and outs of all of that, and that's how I got my start there in Canada with him. And rodeoed quite a few years with Darren, even though after I bought my pro card in 94 in PRCA. And so Darren really helped me get a good start there. My first year coming down to the PRCA rodeos, Cliff Williamson brought me down to the winter rodeos and got me started down here. Got to know more guys in that type of scenario. And that was kind of at the end of when Cliff and Larry and Joe, them guys were, done rodeoing full time. They were.
So you was around a lot of the Canadian legends kind of at the end of their career. The Joe Lucas, Cliff Williams. It was some of the main guys from up there at that point in time.
Oh, shoot. They were
in the calf roping.
Those guys were kind of the main guys that you had to deal with every day. There was also multiple other guys too, but I guess I looked up to them guys also along the way as I was growing up too. And Cliff, he was really good about bringing me down that first year, and sure showed me a lot and opened my eyes on what the PRCA was all about.
And then you said 94 was when you started kind of butting heads in the calf roping?
Yes, sir. Down
because you were mainly just calf roping. You kind of just filled in a little bit here and there on the heeling side, correct? Yeah,
I started filling in kind of later on into the 90s thereafter I kind of got rodeoing full-time, roping calves. But the calf roping was full-time for me at that point. It was set up a lot different then. Team roping wasn't as big up there through the 90s, early 2000s like it is now.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It was kind of, it damn sure wasn't popular. That's for sure. It was almost kind of almost not liked up there. I remember kind of going up there a little bit, and I remember they kind of treated it almost more of the team roping up there in Canada more of a specialty act. It seemed like for the longest time.
It was. We had some guys that put our own finals together and did it on the side, and the main events went to the Canadian finals.
Yeah, and
that's kind of how we did it, and that's where I won 3 titles, I guess, up there is before they actually had it at the finals, and along with me making the Canadian finals and the calf roping too. So,
who was some of the guys when you were rodeoing in the PRCA when you kind of got your start? Who was some of the guys you traveled with, and who were some of the guys you looked up to?
I started with Cliff there, and then I got in with Strand Smith and Sean McMullen, and rode it with them for a couple years there at the start, and that went really well. And then Cody jumped in with us for a while too, and
Cody O,
and Marty Wells was in there. Roy Cooper, he was still going fairly strong then too. So there's kind of a mixture in there for a few years, and then I'd stayed at Sean McMullen's place there off and on for a couple of winters.
Iran, Texas. And that was kind of goat country.
It was goat country, lots of goats.
So the only thing survive out there, down in West Texas, correct?
Yes, sir. And I remember the first winter I went and stayed at Sean's. He loved to rope and he loved to hunt at night. So we would hunt all night and then rope all day. And he trained horses with his goats. He had it set up there where either I would rope the goat and stay on his young horse, and then somebody on the ground would tie and just get them calf horses going. That's kind of how he started them. And I remember that first winter, I hated roping goats. I'd catch about 1 in every 8, and it was like, so he got me through that deal a little bit, but Sean, he really was a great guy, and learned a lot from him. And then the next winter when I come down, I'm like, okay, I'm either going to like this goat tying or roping these goats, or I'm just not going to do it at all. And so it was kind of like, when you decide to go play golf, it's like, well, am I going to go, or am I going to golf like I'm, expect myself to rope like that at level, or am I going to enjoy it and learn from it? And it actually really helped me, my roping out a lot.
Yeah, because for a lot of the people that are young, those were the guys. Sean McMullen, he was one of the guys. He was in the top 10. Cody Ohl, everyone knows who he is. Strand Smith, same thing. Those are some elite cats that you were able to jump in the rig with.
It was.
What was that culture like? What was a lot of the conversations? What do you guys do for fun?
We roped a lot. There's a little bit of golfing involved. A lot of jacking around. Me and Sean would wrestle all the time. Just stuff like that. Strand too. A lot of joking around. There were serious moments, but then we enjoyed it too.
It was such a different culture then, because that's what it was like back then to rodeo without the internet.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody to have a phone was rare.
Oh,
it was
very rare.
A lot of kids don't even realize what a payphone is. You had to stop at every mini mart and find a payphone to be able to get a hold of anybody.
That's right.
So when you're in the rig, there is no phone, there's no internet. Playing cards, telling stories. There was a lot more to do. There was more social interacting than what it is now.
A lot more social acting. I look back, and like you say, with the cell phone deal, I mean, cell phones, you could buy that little small flip phone at Walmart, and I think that come out at 96, 97. And, but without that part of the phone deal, I remember hauling butt across middle of nowhere, needing to get to a payphone to get callbacks or enter a rodeo, and everything was done on a payphone. But like you say, like there's so much more interaction on conversations, on how people, talk between one another than it is now, instead of just texting somebody.
Yeah.
Or calling on the phone. So that part there, I can really notice the difference from now till back then.
Yeah, for sure. And you made the NFR in 95 and 97.
Yes,
correct?
Sir.
What was the NFR like back then? And when you made the finals for the first time, what was that like?
It was obviously a huge goal that you always look forward to accomplishing. I knew the setup was really going to fit me because I grew up on short deals like that in Canada. That's all I did is rope on short scores up there. And through the regular season, I mean, I had to learn more of a long game and maybe even a middle game of my run because I really wasn't in that atmosphere a whole lot growing up in Canada. So
that would make sense because you guys grew up basically in a lot of hockey rinks.
A lot of hockey rinks.
So a lot of the similarities of those arenas set up to the NFR.
It did.
So I could see what you're saying. So when you go to like Sisters, Oregon, 18, 20-foot box, you're a lot further away from the calf. Same with Reno. A lot of those rodeos, when you get outside, is the setup's so much further out where you're out in the middle of the arena as opposed to being right there.
And I really had to get a feel for that because a lot of times there, I felt like I was running myself out of the roping. So then it really hindered the second half of my run because I was just trying to catch up and make time up where I didn't need to. And so there was a balance point there that I had to really learn. And once that happened, then my run got real consistent as far as my short, long, and middle game come along, and it was a lot more consistent that way. But as far as making the finals there the first time, it was the setup I knew was going to be spot on. I was not going to have to worry about that. Just getting the mindset of stepping in there and making sure that I run one calf at a time and not try to let the hype of the whole scenario overwhelm you too much.
Yeah, and that's a good mentality to have going into it, but the confidence to be able to know that when you go there that's going to be your comfort zone, because that's different than from, say, when I grew up in Oregon. Everything was outside. Everything was long score, as far as heading goes.
Right.
I grew up kind of opposite of where you were at, where you grew up in short, fast, tight setups. Our stuff was big, wide open, long box, long scores. And so when I got to the NFR, it was so foreign to me.
Right. Yeah.
And you see that a lot in a lot of competitors, where they grew up is where their strengths kind of sometimes are, the headers that come from the Southwest.
For sure.
When they get to the NFR, they blast them.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of, I can see that to where, and I've seen it in the calf rope a little bit too, where you see some of the guys that are real strong throughout the year, but then the NFR is not as comfortable.
Right.
And then you have Riley Webb that's comfortable no matter where he goes.
Exactly.
That guy's a stud, huh?
He is
Son
a stud.
Of a gut.
Golly.
It's so cool to watch when you're able to see someone that's technique is so correct that he's like a machine. He's like, keep doing it and keep doing it. And to be that consistently fast is phenomenal.
It is. And that shows how your basics are, if you trust your basics like Riley does, it shows in his roping. Even though on a short setup, he gets it on fast, but he's patient in the stirrup, lets the run catch up at the end of the rope, sets up them cattle at the end so he can step through and flank and string and everything's controlled, and then he just finishes his run. It's really cool to watch.
Especially at such a young age, too, where every run that I watch, he's so ahead of it. You can tell that it wasn't just practicing to be perfect. He was able to adjust when the calf stepped over here, the calf stepped over there. When he flanks and they're kind of fighting the flank a little bit, still just being able to catch the foot, not panic, and just just so many scenarios he just spot on with ahead of the run, no matter what the calf was kind of doing. That's elite.
It is very elite.
And like you say, the technically being so correct in his technique.
Yeah. So many guys out there rope so well, but then you watch where it's so easy to get ahead of yourself. And then how your week is going also, if you haven't been, placing along the way or winning very good, then you try to do extra and get ahead of yourself. And then that's not necessarily the answer you want to look for.
Yeah. And then, like I say, when I got my permit in 95, 96, and then I bought my card in 98, and that was my rookie year. And so when I was coming out there and going, man, anytime the healer didn't show up and the header needed a partner, you were the guy. Everyone was like, man, you got to get Marty B. You got to get Marty B. And every time I would watch like this on the heel side, it was so easy for you. No matter, and you never rode your own horse.
No, never had.
You would always get on somebody else's horse and just wheel them down every single time. And to me, heeling is hard because there's so much hand-eye coordination. There's so much timing to it. And to be able to just do it part-time and then be spot on all the time, that was always very impressive. were you able to was it just always easy for you, or?
Healing did come easy to me, and I really had a passion for it. Growing up, my parents took me down to Arizona to Alan Bach's camps that he used to have down there, and backing it up, he had come up to him and Jimmy Cooper had come up to Canada and did a school, and I went to that school, and I was heading at the time, and I was just sitting there through the school watching him and Jimmy make runs, and I'm like, gosh, that's what I want to do. And so me and Alan, we went back and forth, and he always wanted me to stick to the head, and he said heading's where it's at, and you got to do that. And I'm like, no, I want to heel, and he's like, no, you be a top end header. That's where you need to go. And, but it was different in Canada, there was a lot of good ropers up there, but there wasn't the consistency on the heeling side. And that's where I wanted to learn to dominate that part of it. And, so when we went down to his school or his camp down there in Arizona, spent over a month there, and Alan got me started heeling, and then it just went from there. And I heeled for my dad for 5 years at the amateurs, and, we did really well. And it was easy, but again, I understood the basics of it. And that's what Alan really taught me at the beginning, is got me started with the real good, solid basics of it. And I think that's where it just grew from there. And then when I got to filling in and stuff along the way during here, it was just like, hey, this is a great opportunity for me to be able to heel some steers when I was having to do my main deal on the calf roping side.
Yeah. When was it that you decided that you started taking the heeling more seriously? Started actually getting a partner, having a horse, and it's kind of become more full-time? I
guess towards the end of my calf roping career, when I thought that, it's probably time for me to kind of step to the side a little bit. I didn't have very many injuries along the way. I was real, fortunate for that. Pulled some groin muscles and this and that along the way, but it was horsepower. It was, I guess, maybe a little bit burnt out, because I'd really mashed for a lot of years, and then keeping the horsepower and stuff along the way was tricky too at times. But, so I kind of stepped aside and wanted to get more into the heeling side of it, and got me some good heel horses, and got started with that, and then moved on from there.
One of the things that I remembered a lot was it didn't seem like very many headers that started off heading heeled very good. I'm one of them. And I also remember, too, a lot of calf ropers that when they had to heel, it was not a strength. Mm-hmm. The calf rope and swing being a little more in front. It just wasn't very compatible when it went to heeling. You broke the mold with that.
Well, and I always, when I broke it down and learned my foundation there as a youngster there, I guess, I took the same swing in both events, and all I did was change the position I rode and an angle of my loop, and that was it. Kept it simple that way, to where I think guys that just strictly rope calves, I think that tightens up a lot. And then there's guys that rope calves and team rope. I think that broadens that swing, and you learn your coverage more, because you're covering more of a bigger area, obviously. And that's where the, a calf's head's not that big, or the target's not that big, but that's what can pull you in. And I always thought, well, even though it's a small target, I'm going to make sure that target, whatever it is going to be in the center of my loop, and I'm always going to have that coverage. And I think that helped me over the years be very consistent on not missing very many calves. And I think that was very important, having a high percentage of catch ratio along the way.
One of my opinions too is that if you learn how to heel, it seems like everything else is almost easier. And one of the reasons I say that is because look at some of the best headers in the world. Mm-hmm. Speedy Williams heeled first. Clay Smith heeled first. Clay Driggers heeled first. So many of the top headers heeled first.
Yep.
And to me, every healer, I've watched them rope a calf dummy too. Just their hand-eye coordination and the way they can handle that rope. It's a really good event that when you get that event down, it seems like a lot of the other events are kind of almost fall into an order where it's almost easy for you in a way.
I think so too. Heeling, you have to have a lot of patience. There's so many things that you have to adjust through the runs. There are never two runs that are the same. And just position-wise, learning timing, matching cattle, all that comes into play. And that's where I think like you say, really built a mold for you moving into, say, roping calves or another event. I think that really built a good foundation for you.
And the unfortunately, the heeling, you never did get a chance to make the NFR, even though you came close and always heeled good enough. The fact that you never got a back number always boggled me because of how well you heeled. You were 16th one year, wasn't it?
I was 16th. It was last year they had Dallas, and they had Puyallup, and then you moved on from Puyallup into Dallas.
Who were you roping with that year?
Jake from Oregon.
Oh, Jake Stanley.
Jake Stanley.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Jake Stanley. And we'd rodeoed in Canada and back and forth. And I might have roped with somebody else a little bit through that year too, but me and Jake, we roped at Dallas and through the end part of it and end up just missing the finals that year.
Yeah, because the heeling has always looked so easy for you. And one of the things too that you always had just an amazing amount of patience, whether it was in your calf rope and run, heel and run, but with your horses. Your horses always looked very confident, very comfortable. It always seemed like your patience kind of went into basically you being a horse trainer. It seemed like it was a very good fit. What are some of the guys that you trained with and that you rode with? Because you were good on the heel side. It always seemed like you had good ones. You rode with a lot of top guys, and then the training. It seems like you just had such good knowledge of being able to work with the horse. And so, who are some of the guys that you got that kind of helped you with that?
I think growing up, riding with my dad, and we had usually about 20 head of horses around there all the time. And the horses we ranched on, we'd compete on too, type scenario. And Dad never let me just ride and get comfortable with just one horse. And I think that really built my horsemanship a lot because, they were all really nice horses, but there's parts of your horsemanship that you got to understand the timing and how to use them to your advantage. And so bringing that along at a young age and then stepping into the pro level, being able to ride the caliber horses that I did, I think was amazing. And then... Yeah,
because I was thinking too, I've always heard that saying that sometimes it's not... that if you ride a good horse, sometimes in order to know if you've ever rode, you have to ride a good horse to know what a good horse is.
That's right.
And you, in the late 90s, you rode all the top guys as heel horses, huh?
All the top guys.
What are some of the heel horses you rode back then?
Oh gosh. Well, there was Chili Dog, that's who I rode when I roped with Speedy, them two winners there. And then there was,
You've been on Roni before, hadn't you?
Roni, Jackal, man, there's so many that I can't remember their names anymore. It's been a while, but got a chance to ride all them horses. And then Kyle Lockett, he mounted me a lot on a couple of his horses. He always had really good heel horses. It just kind of went down the list, but being able to ride those type of caliber horses was pretty cool. And
what was always phenomenal about watching a lot of those good ones, it almost looked like the horses always stayed almost in time with the steer to where it was just flowed.
It just flowed.
And when you've been on that and feel that, it is a very hard thing to explain.
It is. And teaching somebody timing and that type of feel, you have to back it up because you can't teach timing. Timing's such a feel that you learn to create. And if you learn that through having a horse underneath you to let you match the momentum of a cow and hold that, well, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here's the flow that I'm trying to feel. But if there's a mismatch between your horse and the cow, well, then the cow's always got the advantage. They're always beating you somewhat in the run. And that's where you end up.
And that mismatch that you're talking about, is that when the feet are down, the horse's strides up. So everything's like almost like a square wheel.
It is.
The horse is out of time with the steer. And so if you're in time with the steer, then you're out of time with your horse. So when you throw, basically your horse is going to keep going or hit his front end because you're almost That's where I think that's important to know, is because I everyone that heels knows what that feels like. And for a lot of guys that listen to this podcast, they might be stuck in that feel. And that's where it's the learning the horsemanship to where you can get the timing with both is That is an art, and that does make the job a lot easier, huh?
Makes it a lot easier, and that's the mismatch, like you're talking right there, that's happening. Your horses are always in mid stride, or they're hollowed out a little bit, and that's where the collection of your riding skills in your horsemanship comes up into that left hand, keeping them horses collected, matching the stride of the run with the cow. That's where your timing is all developed through, and that's really a cool thing that I learned through the years. I was doing it, but I guess I maybe wasn't totally aware of what I was doing when I was creating runs. And until I got just throwing the rope away and just going and riding with a few guys with just the horsemanship side of it, really brought a lot of cool things into my roping, to where I wasn't really realizing what I was doing. And then there was things that I learned also on the side that took some panic out of my runs too. You know, what I can do to use this horse to my advantage a lot more than just transportation.
Yeah.
At times, right?
Mm-hmm. So I'd love to get into your coaching a little bit, because, when we talked about some of the guys you traveled with in the calf roping, between Cody Old to Strand Smith, the guys you competed against, Fred Whitfield, all those things that you got to see, and you got to watch some of the competitors, the Joe B's, all the guys back then. Those guys were some strong competitors, and then the guys you got to heel for. We were talking about being able to jump on all the top healers, best heel horses, watching them heel and then be able to get on them. There's a lot of things you see, and then when you're talking about heading or heeling for Speedy Williams and some of the top guys that you got to rope for filling in also. I mean, you got to rope with you got to see so many things. There had to be so much of that had to be a contributing to what I think is why you're such a good coach, in my opinion.
I think that the industry really taught me a lot over the years of rodeoing. You see a lot of stuff. You're involved in a lot with the roping side of it. Like you say, you learn so many of the ins and outs. And that's where I'd like to help my students with that process. What to expect when you step out into that type of playing field, or what we're doing to build fundamentals and our basic steps leading to those levels. I think that's important to as a coach, to help that angle move forward.
Yeah.
And when I was traveling with all those guys, I just remember, the time that me and Fred spent in the practice pen, just flanking and tying, the breaking down little angles of just stepping out in the end. There's all kinds of different scenarios that we worked on and bettering our run at all times. Well, those are things that developed when I was rodeoing, that I can take that information and help my students with. And so the industry really taught me a lot leading into being a clinician.
I think too is when I've watched you and your kids out here practicing and stuff, and just your patience and how you deal with them. But I've listened to you talk, and there's, you do a good job. You understand the little things and little angles that create that successful run. And, like I say, having that many different events, I think has had to help too. But when you're talking about coaching and, how things were back then, and you're seeing kind of how things are now, when you go and you're hauling these kids, your kids to the junior events and things like that, and also being a clinician and having all these kids come to your house, what do you think some of the things are that the steps that the kids are missing?
I think it all starts from the beginning of the run to the finish. Everybody's going to have some stages in their run that needs to be developed a little bit more, and to smoothen out the whole process of it. And so there's going to be some that we're learning how. There's kids that I help that are just coming into the jackpots and getting a start. We talk about the scoring, and then we talk about how we're getting our start, how we lead into setting our runs up and onward. But I think it's important to understand with how the industry is set up here for the opportunity with the kids, is being able to go to these jackpots and run multiple cattle. It's not like you're just going to like a junior rodeo to where you go for the weekend, you might run 2 calves. I think the jackpots have really helped that a lot. And that's what I really see in difference in all my students, but my kids also, is we're able to go and run multiple calves that day and help along the way. I talk about it briefly after every run or briefly before each run we make, and stay on point. And we're actually, it's almost like we're at in the practice pen, we're open, we're talking and working on stuff at the same time, and that we're competing. But I think that really helps them settle in and build that foundation to bring the run along.
I was talking with Peyton a little bit too, because that's one of the guys that you've mentored and helped, and he gives a lot of credit to a lot of his foundation, being able to go to your house, and Peyton Bray. And Jackie said that she worked for you for a little while and was able to ride some of your horses and bring some of her horses over. And she said that if she was ever going to hang herself, it would be with a heel rope. And she said you're one of the few people that she felt like she could resonate with, that because you're so patient, and the breakdown, everything slowed down and was easy. And Peyton said a lot of the same things, where it was always easy to understand, easy to digest. And, those are 2 pretty good ropers. And that's a pretty good testimony in your coaching. It's
really cool testimony of having the opportunity to have both them come and rope with me over a period of time, and have the time to be able to slow it down to where we had the time to be able to digest it, and not just, keep ramming every day, at a short period of time. And they really got a chance to build the foundation around their horsemanship first. And that's the direction that I went at the beginning. I think that's the important part. Take the rope away to a certain point and understand how we can use our horses to develop these runs. And then the rope is going to have less pressure at the end. And that's where you can have the more consistency with that. I think if we're seeing different throws each run we make, it obviously adds pressure. And with Jackie and
hard to be consistent.
It is very hard. And with Jackie and Peyton, it was all basically kind of slow work, a lot of sled work, a lot of training steers to medium steers. It was always a very controlled environment, and we were able to not get ahead of ourselves and learn to build those fundamentals. And they just run with it. They just run with it after that.
Some of my philosophies that I've talked about in the clinics that I've had, and I'd love to get your take on it as well. This kind of, it's always fun, clinician to clinician, kind of breaking it down. But what I've always told everyone is that, I'll always ask everyone, what do you think is the most important thing about being a successful roper? And I'll listen to, we got to have fun, no horsemanship and this and that. And I said, and I always kind of like to be a little controversial right at the bat. And I said, catch him. Because if you don't catch, you don't win shit.
That's right.
And so
no fun if you don't catch.
Yeah. Well, and anything you can think of, any jackpot that if you, there's certain rodeos you might get paid if you miss, if it gets that Final Four. But in any jackpot, I don't know anybody that's ever won anything that they missed.
That's right.
I've seen people be late and still win something. I've seen people break a barrier and still win something. I've seen them rope a leg and still win something, or fish it on and still win something. But if you don't catch, you don't win. So I always talk about the importance of understanding the rope.
Yep.
Knowing the technique, knowing the swing, knowing when and where to break your rope over. Get it to where that right hand can learn how to put that rope, like you said. I always say that a lot of the same things what you said too, is being able to get the horns in the middle of your loop. No matter if the steer ducks his head to the right, left, lower head, same thing heeling. Learn to read every steer, whether he runs the rope, whether he hits the end of it, whether he comes up underneath, whether he gets heavy. Learn how to make sure that right hand can react to all those situations.
Right.
And that's what I kind of base in first, which you can do a lot of that stuff on the ground.
You can.
In my opinion. Then I think it comes, okay, now can we train the left hand and feet?
That's right.
Can we teach the left hand and the feet to learn how to work together?
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. Can your left hand and right hand do something completely different? Because in the heading, no, not much in my opinion, different than the breakaway or the calf roping.
Mm-hmm.
What sets up the run?
That's right.
The start.
The start.
If you don't hit that start and get that calf or get that steer before they get away, that's where the money's at.
That's right.
And if you break out, that's left hand and feet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're late, that's your left hand and feet and your training and your horsemanship. But to get those things trained where they learn how to work together. But like I say, if you're not sweating near as much about the swing,
mm-hmm.
then I think then it's easier to learn how to, now we got to train that left hand and the feet. Because that in the heading, that's what's going to get your start. That's what's going to set up your position.
Yep.
That's what's going to set up your corner. That's what's going to bring the steers back to where you put jelly on the biscuit for the
mm-hmm.
healer. And
That's
then that's
right.
what's going to be able to face your horse.
Exactly.
So those things, learning to almost separate them, a lot of what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with the same thing in the breakaway. You know, when I was hauling my daughter around, you know, she would be late or break out. You know, and that's when we started hauling her to the rodeos. And finally, I'm like, all right, let's not even worry about catching the calf.
Mm-hmm.
Let's worry about hitting the start, set your shot up. Let's hit the start, set your shot up. Really focus on the left hand and feet of putting yourself in that spot.
Yep.
And finally, she nails the start, sets the shot up, and misses to win the rodeo. Now we're talking the amateurs, you know, so this is a big deal for a high school kid, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we get to the trailer depressed.
Yeah.
I can't believe I missed it. I missed to win the run. And I'm excited. I'm giving her a high five.
For sure.
Because I know what sets up the run. You've got to have that.
We did all of that.
Because she would get so excited as she caught the calf, but she bounced him off the back of the buck and shoots.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's still in no time, in my opinion.
That's right.
You know, I mean, we got to hit that start because that's where the win is.
Yep.
And she hits the start and misses. And she's like, Dad, I just missed to win it. I said, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You missed to win it.
That's right.
I said, we can adjust the swing. We can adjust a few things, but until you hit that start and set that shot up, you know, now they got to kind of almost separate themselves a little bit because I feel like the most frustrated I think a lot of ropers get is when they're trying to do it all at once.
All at once. And I think what you're just saying is so true. It's the work you do in your runs is from the time your left hand leaves the corner and leading into your delivery. That all that work right there is what needs to take the pressure off your rope to be able to rope the target consistently. And that's the easiest thing we should be able to set up in the run is rope the neck or rope the horns or rope the feet. But leading into that delivery to the start of the run is all the hard work that we need to make sure sets up consistently to be able to take the pressure off our rope. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of the coaching that I think we do along the way is letting our students understand how that start is being created, how that position is settling into our cattle, leading into that delivery is such an important factor because if you're trying to rope the neck before you've even gotten half the run put together, then how can we be consistent with that?
Yeah.
So
getting ahead of the run too much, huh?
Exactly. And there's so much anticipation that happens honestly in all events, but if you want to talk a breakaway, there's so much anticipation of that finish.
Because it's so fast.
It's so fast. It's set up to be fast. And the maintenance that has to happen right in that small little area leading into a delivery is where a lot of the mistakes happen because we're trying to break the string before we've even started delivering our rope a lot of times. And we need to learn to maintain into our runs to where we can keep them horses with us to take the pressure off them wanting to get into that stop and breaking off before we've even delivered our rope. So if we can balance that part out right there, we're going to rope a lot more cattle and you're going to surprise yourself on how fast you're going to be. You see a lot of girls that have that good combination in their run to where they almost run them out of sight and they're still 2-1, 2-2. You know, it's not like they just roped 1 and 2 swings. They might have went 3 or 4 swings, but the timing of the run, all that comes into factor of how well that's going to finish. Yeah. And I think that's so important to learn in that whole base of the run right there than just coming across, you know, getting caught up in a knife fight all the time. Yeah.
Some of the things that I've seen in the coaching, especially with the young kids that I've seen, a lot of the steps are skipped. You know, really, I've seen more of that too. When all we had to kind of watch was the NFR. You know, now there's so many more breakdowns and futurities and things like that we could watch. if you're just a kid on the head side wanting to kind of learn the basics. Well, before that, everything was Cowboy Channel or the NFR, and that was the only thing anyone watched. And so you're watching these kids that are number 3s that can barely stay on a horse, cocking their rope and looking for that first shot. And like, whoa, we're skipping so many steps. And on the breakaway, I've seen it a lot too, where, everyone's looking to rope, so they're not scoring, not riding, because they're trying to be too flat. And so the step skip is some of the things that I've seen a lot of. But I really liked what you're talking about the anticipation. In my opinion, even if you know the steps, if you know all the moving parts, I've seen it. We've been there. I've been there. The top girls have been there. The top guys have been there. To me, that's why there's so much. You don't see guys winning every time. Is I think there's most of the things that usually come when there's a flaw, in my opinion, is when you're anticipating a step.
That's right.
Like for the head and side, a lot of times your shoulders might leak a little bit early before the start gets there and you start breaking the barrier. I'm sure it happens a lot in the calf rope and a breakaway as well.
For sure.
Because it happens so fast. So you anticipate it a little bit, get the barrier, ride before you score. Head side, a lot of times, when we go to reaching a little bit, it doesn't take long before you start pulling your slack before it gets there, or your shoulders start going left before your delivery goes. All those little anticipation things, to me, kind of magnify when they're not hitting just right, and that's human error. That's just, and I see a lot in the calf rope and breakaway as well. That's when you're talking about the anticipation. Even if you know the steps, those things do happen.
They still happen.
That's where it's good having eyes.
That's right.
To me, that's where you have the eyes. You have your buddies. You have a coach, whatever it is, to where we know all those little moving parts, and sometimes those are things you don't see yourself in the video when you watch, and you definitely can't feel it.
That's right.
Because we were there stuck in how many ruts because what we thought we were doing, and then you watch a video where someone else points it out, and you're like, I had no idea.
And that's the difference of nowadays. I wish you and me, even back when we got rolling there in the 90s, we had more of options of getting more runs on video. We kind of had to do it the rough way, and now it's like
so easy.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
And I think the breaking down part of it's gotten so finely tuned now. And I think the mentality of, being in a position to have a coach on the side, I think is so important. And I don't think there was as much of that back then either.
I 100% agree with the camera phones, and they've gotten so good and so clear that the technology, I think, is what has really enhanced the competition.
Yeah.
Because you are able to pinpoint those little things where, like we said, back in the 90s and, things like that, it was a camera that you put on your shoulder.
That's right.
And you had to go find a VH test to watch it.
Yep. It wasn't a very easy setup.
It wasn't easy access.
No, it wasn't. And that's where I think nowadays it's, I mean, just with my kids, gosh, everything's on video. Just throwing a neck shot around a dog at the house, it's on video. It's just, you have everything. And I think that's where the levels have just had an opportunity to really even fine tune even that much more. But at the same time, stay on track of what we're maintaining as far as our maintenance goes along the way with our runs also. I think that's so important. And I see a lot of that in my lessons. We work on little scenarios here and there with whichever level the roper's at, but we fine tune one or two little things in the run, and then all of a sudden the whole run becomes simpler and time's back up.
It's amazing what happens when you find the fault at the start. Because a lot of times if you can find where that flaw is from the start, it almost takes care of a lot of the other little things that happened after that.
That's right.
Because a lot of times it's kind of like treating the problem instead of the symptom. A lot of times, not knowing, you'll treat the symptom and it's not even the root of the problem.
It's not even the root of the problem.
Sometimes if you can get to the root, then it's amazing how many things after that just kind of come together.
And that's what I always try to help my students with. It's like, don't try to dissect where it happened. When the mistake happened, don't try to dissect it right there. Let's go back to the beginning of the run and then work back to the mistake.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, there's going to be the run's going to somewhat get off track. And then each step after that's going to be getting more pressure all the time happening on each step as we go. And then all of a sudden it's going to explode, right? And that's an easy way to dissect what's going on in your run instead of trying to do it right at the problem, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're trying to do some off the wall thing to keep it from happening.
Yeah.
And then you create bad habits.
One of the things too that I also talk about, we talked about the roping. You got to be able to understand the rope. Then once, two, we talked about the horsemanship. If you don't have a good horse, we've seen at the top level, how many headers did we see that never showed up again once that good horse went out, or the guys that couldn't maintain their horses, the horsemanship, left hand, all that stuff. That is a huge element to fit the run together, whether it's calf roping, heeling, heading. You go down the list.
Yep.
Third, I think, equation of being a successful roper is the mental game. I've always thought that you had a really good, easy, kilter, level way of looking at everything where it was very simple. What are some of the things that you help a lot of the people that you coach? What are some of the mental things or games or anything like that you kind of do? And what I mean by that is, like, when I see if I'm doing a clinic, and I see someone that's starting to peak out, they're hitting it. Their first swing's getting brought up the right side or at the right place. The start was hitting there. They're getting in there rating, ready to rope. They're setting it up like they're starting to get their confidence up. And so when I feel like they're there, all right, high team back.
Start putting some scenarios in
10 point whatever for the dub. Here's a scenario. You told me your goal was to win the high school finals, or to make the high school finals, or the college finals, or to beat Billy Jack butt crack at the jackpot, or to get a chance to go to the World Series finals. Whatever it is, we put those. And okay, here, remember that goal?
Yep.
Now it's here. Last steer. What are you going to do? And then just watch and see where they go. And I've seen some that just almost rope even better in that situation. And then I've seen some that don't even look like the same roper.
Yep.
That they were doing as they were progressing into that peak performance.
That's right.
And so what are some of the things that, that you really look at and study?
Well, I think we go through those scenarios, and it goes right through different levels of ropers. And I think how it's all set up now, where, like, as the kids come along, they're able to rope themselves into different scenarios at these jackpots, put themselves on different stages. And I think that's so cool, because they learn how to handle those situations, but yet they're learning how to win at the same time. And winning is something just like timing. It's hard to teach somebody that, but you can give them scenarios on keeping their mindset in the right spot, trusting their run. Don't let your mind get busy before you ride in there. Just because you're high call at the high school finals doesn't mean this run is any different than the 3 or 4 runs prior that got you in this situation.
So what do you mean by don't let your mind get busy?
Well, I remember over the years to where I would take myself off off what I'm supposed to be basically, what do you call it? Focusing on, it's like, okay, I'm in this scenario now. I hope I don't do this or I don't do that. I kind of hold back. I second guess myself. Those are all just easy things that negatives come in, and that's where you learn to push the negatives off and turn it into a positive. Like, no, I'm going to beat this off and I'm going to override this to where I'm going to stay focused on my run. I'm going to trust it. And I think helping people through the practice sessions and stuff, they learn what their run's about. That run can go right into competition. Don't change anything. That's what you've worked on all week. Let's go put that in competition and test it out. Let's see how that works for us. You know what I'm saying?
I like when you said too about the focus point, what were we focused on? Because in my opinion, one of the best books I've ever read was the book With Winning in Mind. Love that book. Game changer book as far as I've read quite a few. I wouldn't say a lot, but a few. That one really resonated because I really enjoyed the performance journal he was talking about. And it basically talked about when you're peaked out, like when everything's hitting on all cylinders.
Yep.
What did you see? What did you feel? What were you focused on? What were you telling yourself during that run when everything went good? I think my problem when I competed, when I was rolling, my mind was quiet.
It was quiet.
And I never thought. But I also wasn't really taking really good notes on what I was focused on and what was working. Because then when it hit the crapper, then all of a sudden now the thinking came in. Now the overthinking come in.
Lots of overthinking.
Now I'm trying to fix it. Now I'm in my head,
Yeah.
And I didn't do a good enough job of like when I was peaked out, what were the things that were hitting just right that created those runs?
That's right.
And because I've heard that if you'll keep basically this book talked about, if you'll keep a performance journal when you're peaked out, you kind of know the recipe of how to create that run.
Yeah.
And it also talked about keeping a performance journal when when your roping hits the crapper, because that's something you got to dig your way out of, because everyone's split the horns before.
Sure.
And then they've gotten that, they've roped horns good. Then all of a sudden, like Tin Cup, the shanks came.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now I can't catch a left horn. I can't catch the left horn. And then you got yourself out of it. Well, think about what that recipe was from when your roping dipped to how you got back to your peak. So then that way, when you split the horns again, it's just like that to get yourself back there.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what it was that switched and what the technique error was, then I think that's where I always call overthinking a lot like riding a bike and the chain falls off the pedals. Mm-hmm. You're just pedaling your ass off and you can't get nowhere.
That's right.
And I think when the chain gets back on the tracks or back on the pedals is basically when you find that one little thing and you found the answer to it, and then you're back to moving again. That's it's a big part of it, because we've been there competing. And especially you with that many different events, knowing of, okay, when I was in that zone, what created it? And then how did I get myself out of those slumps?
That's right.
Because that's a lot of competing is the mental game. I've seen some people that don't have that great of talent and have some flaws in their technique, but man, I'm telling you, they win.
They win.
And I've seen, there's hundreds of people that outrode me, through my career. We can go down the list of guys that were just unbelievably talented.
Right.
But couldn't figure out how to win.
Yeah.
And so, that's where I always talk about the mental game as a key component to be able to tie the other two together, about being able to keep your horses together and still being able to catch.
Well, I think so too. And there's a lot said to that balance of your mental game. Like anything where we've got big hills and valleys, that there's a lot of changes go on. And that's a harder part of it to get broke loose of. But like you said, when things are rolling and it's easy and you're winning, it's like you can't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You could, and I think you find that balance and of that particular thing with your mindset along the way, and learn how to maintain that. And that's, I think, going back to trusting your fundamentals, keeping everything in order, not trying to do too much, and keeping yourself in the run and roping the cattle that you draw. Keeping that part all in perspective will help you maintain more of a even keel along the way, so you don't have those big dips and valleys and highs and lows.
When you talk about roping what you draw, to me, that's a huge component and a huge mindset that, in my opinion, when you say that, helps a lot of people try not to do more than they can do, for one. And also, in my opinion, it kind of slims down a little bit of the things when you're trying to control more than you can control.
That's right.
Because that's a big part of, I think, winning too, is when a lot of people are focused on so much stuff that they're also almost letting their mind go on things that they can't control.
Right.
What can I control? If I can hit that start, if I can set up my position, set up my throw, basically control on if you can trust your training, like you said, or trust to practice and be able to make those runs, those are the things. And your attitude, and your mental game, those are things you can control.
That's right.
Now there's times you're going to miss a start. That happens. You're not perfect. But if you're consistently missing the start, okay, now we got to focus on it. But if you turn, 5 steers and you only miss a start one time, those are pretty good stats.
Really good stats.
And so, I think a lot of times too is giving yourself enough grace, knowing that there's things that are going to happen, but as long as it don't consistently happen, allow yourself some grace for every once in a while. And, maybe I've thrown plenty of loops that skipped on
for sure.
The next one went on a lot cleaner.
That's right. And they still pay you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times too, however you're kind of looking at your run and practicing your run, some mentalities get too focused on being perfect every time. And I think that'll hold a person back more than anything.
Perfection mindset's a tough one.
It's a tough one. And
I dealt with that a lot.
And that's where I think you need to ease that part up just a little bit and allow yourself to make a mistake and then learn from it and grow around that part of it. And I think sometimes along the way, looking back, I I was kind of a perfectionist too. I didn't want to make a mistake. Had good fundamentals, obviously, but I sometimes held myself back of just going and taking a chance sometimes, you know, and it was okay to learn to know that it was okay to make a mistake.
I remember telling Speedy Williams one time I had a couple of practice sessions and, you know, I bragged about, you know, man, I can't believe I missed this deer at the rodeo. I mean, I've been practicing for 2 days, never missed one. He goes, you never missed one in the practice bin? I said, no, in the last 2 days. He goes, well, apparently you weren't trying hard enough.
Right.
I said, what? He said, if you ain't missing the practice bin, then you're probably too comfortable.
Yep.
He said, some misses in the practice pen are good. That means you're stretching yourself.
Yep.
You know, and I always kind of called him the MacGyver of roping. I mean, that guy, he almost made practicing harder than competition, but it also proved very, very successful in an 8-time world champion header. You know, one of the guys that changed the game. But it was a good mentality to where it's like allowing yourself to screw up, to take those chances, to not try and be perfect.
That's right.
There's a lot to that. It really did change a lot of the way I thought about things as well.
I think so too. And for the students to understand that, hey, a mistake isn't always got to be put towards a negative all the time. You know, let's turn that into a positive and turn around right now, and let's get moving forward again.
I always liked Corey Kuntz's analogy. He said when he would miss one, he's like, well, good thing about that, I got that out of the way because I never missed 2 in a row.
That's right. That's right. There's all kinds of different little sayings that you can do in your own mind that nobody even has to know about.
Especially if you can turn around to the right way, like you say, a positive. Because the worst thing that can happen is all of a sudden you miss one and the alarm bells go off.
For sure.
Now we're like tin cup. Now we're putting our change in our left pocket, putting our spur on our right spur on our left foot, and turning our head.
There's all kinds of different things. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now?
Mental gymnastics. It can damn sure go that way if he's not careful.
But I'm with you. The mindset and that strong winning ability of what you have in your mind it overrides anything. And less talent and a steady mind, like you say, that's a hard combination to beat. Yeah, it really is. And then you put somebody who's got a lot of talent and a strong mindset. Well, then
Trevor
Brazil. You know, where's it take you?
Yeah, because that guy was a trifecta. He had the horsemanship, he could rope, and he had the mental game and the ability.
For sure.
And the work ethic.
And the work ethic.
That was the exclamation point at the end.
Yep.
Yeah, that guy was it. That was a guy that I really looked up to when it come to mental game.
For sure.
He did not beat himself, and he did not let things. It was kind of, you know, that saying where it talks about, you know, what you let into the boat. You know, it talked about like, you know, a boat that is able to stay above water. Well, what's the goal? To not let the water in. You know, and so what happens when you let the water in and the boat sinks? You know, I think of that a lot of, you know, when I've heard those analogies of negative thinking, not letting the water get in the boat, keep the water out of the boat. And that's a lot of ways I kind of think of negative thinking. Now, that was not a strength of mine growing up. That was a learned skill for me. Right. That was something I really had to work on, really had to study, had to read about, and then watching the other guys like, okay, why are they winning and I'm not? And so really kind of looking at the guys that were good at it. And that was probably my biggest learning. Things that I'd seen was the guys that won, their conversations were different. They thought different.
Yep. And that's a huge part of it. And you look back at those type of conversations or what you hear and see, it's like, and that's what I'm saying. The industry has taught me a lot, you know, and I've seen a lot and stumbled over a lot of rocks along the way, you know, and that's where I, you know, now just being on the teaching side of everything, you know, with my own kids and my clients, it's like, hey, I'm here to help you not have to step over or trip over the rocks that I did along the way. I'm going to help you with a smoother path of wherever you want to take it. But I think it's a cool thing for me because I love to see everybody do good. I want to see them strive and be as good as they want and the amount of effort they want to put in. And when you have clients that have the try and the will to do that, gosh, you can't help but put 110% in to help them get there.
Yeah,
you know?
When you watch that kid trying that hard, you'll come early and stay late as a clinician.
Exactly. You know, and just like, you know, I see my own kids, they love it. They want to get better, and they're out there first thing in the morning before school, you know, either exercising a horse or flanking and tying, whatever it is. They're wanting it, and gosh, you gotta got to go and be there right there with them.
Yeah, absolutely. What are the events? So if people looking for lessons and clinics and things like that, what are the events that you do in clinics or lessons?
We've got team roping, the heading and the heeling, and then the calf roping and breakaway. We're covering all 4.
So you cover all 4.
Yes, sir.
That's a full plate. No wonder you stay so busy.
It's a full plate. Yes, sir.
What were some of your stats at Vegas? Because I know that that's kind of, for me, that's when it's really fun. Like a couple of years ago, I had what I call a champions level clinic, and that was where I have a clinic where we set up the boxes the same as Vegas. And then we take a certain amount of ropers, and I think I got to do it from the 12 down to the 7.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I can try to match the steers, where I think they're pretty close to those ropings. And we set the barriers up, the boxes, I time it. We do for 2.5 days. I want to see like where your time is, and then I'll rope with a healer, and I'll go make some runs and we'll time it. And I don't reach. I just try to make sure I hit the barrier, be ready to rope when I get there, set up the shot by the 3rd hop, and then face on a tight rope. And then, we get that time. And then we also try to see, we researched last year what won it. We divide those runs by 4. So that way we can find out what the average time we need to be in the money.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they go roping, then I'll rope, and so we'll watch it and video it. And then I'll show them, well, I was 0.019 on the barrier. I was able to get to the steer in this spot. You were 0.389 on the barrier, which pulled you down the arena a little bit further, that you weren't able to get your position to set up your shot here. This is where the time, a lot of it was lost,
right.
These points here. And, when we get done some of those clinics, and, I've had a couple of years ago, a good buddy of mine, he won the 10 consolation, and then the next day won 3rd in the 9.5. I think he won like 150-some thousand. I forget exactly, but it was 6 figures.
Yep.
Just one of those times where he's never won it, but he left that clinic and had that run that he was wanting to make, and then just went and did it. A couple of those little tiny adjustments. This year I had another guy that come to a school, then came to a lesson, and then went out there and placed in 4 different jackpots, won 112,000. When you're able to watch the guys that come and compete, or come to your lessons and then go out there and hit. Oh, it's so much fun.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
And another scenario too, like on the heading side, obviously, you want to get that start and onward, but for the healers out there, it's almost like there's no time to set up. You're behind a heeling barrier, and that's where that part there can get a little bit where you can get ahead of yourselves on the back end, because there's really no time to set up and then read your corner, get it, all the momentum controlled right there prior to the corner starting. And that's where I think healers need to understand that, okay, let the process come together where you're not maybe being able to set up, but let yourself get to a certain point of the run to be able to control the cow. Cause you really, sometimes it feels like you've rode 9-10 jumps and you really haven't gone anywhere yet.
Right.
And that's where I try to help the healers know that just because we're halfway through the corner doesn't mean you need to be trying to rope on the first hop because you've gone 9 jumps already. You go ahead and ride to a point, get to the first hop or the second hop, control that run, then let the jumps present themselves after that. And you're still in a great spot to be able to finish the run at and be fast enough.
Yeah.
It's the part of being strung out and learning how to get that control back. And that's sometimes what those heeling barriers will do to them healers a lot of times too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but as far as the other events go with all my students out there, in Vegas or Scottsdale, I mean, all them starts are basically, they're all what we wrote behind all through the year. So it's basically just building our fundamentals and our steps along the way to where we're learning to still control and set our runs up the same, even though we're going to be on a different stage.
Yeah. Yeah. But Heidi, she was telling me that you had quite a few people out there that did pretty good.
Oh my gosh, we had
out there in
an
Vegas.
amazing trip out there with all the clients and with my kids also. They all won with just the totals upwards of 600,000 this year.
That's awesome.
And it was like, wow, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Like I say, that as a clinician, that's when it's fun, is when you see things pay off, and that's when it really does it. Those are some of the things for me that really keeps it where you're keeping your head in the game.
Yeah.
When they're sending me runs and they're telling me what won it, and I'm watching the runs and stuff like that, it really does keep your head in the game. And really, I think a lot of the times too is it's amazing how much you learn when you have to start teaching it.
That's right.
It's amazing what those little things that you learn about your roping, you learn about your horsemanship, you learn about so many more things when you have to learn how to teach it.
It does. It does. And seeing the results out there from what we've worked on with all the clients and my kids, it's so cool to see that develop through the year and then maintain into the stages that we work towards all year when we go to Vegas.
Yeah.
And that was just so neat to see. And with my clients, through the year, it's kind of almost hands-on through the season, because we all are at the same spots at all the same ropings and everything. Yeah. And then I've got my other clients that are on the road full time, but it's all the videos that I get. We go over. It's like you're a coach on the sidelines, then you're always there for them to keep the ball rolling and stay on that mark, so you're ready every time you nod your head.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to do too on this podcast, you have I think there's a lot of people listening to this that are in the parent coach role.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought this part of the podcast, I thought it'd be fun. Your kids just came up here, and let's get a headset on them. Guys, go ahead and get your headset on. And man, I think it'd be pretty cool to be able to talk about, what it's like to coach as a parent, and then also too, what it's like to kind of be the kid, So to Tuftin, we got you up here. You're 13 now, Tuftin?
Yes, sir.
And you, I've heard you also kind of got a little bit of a career in some broadcasting.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Out there at the Kynes Ranch.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we did a couple interviews out there. Yes, sir.
That's awesome. And Bentley, you've been doing a pretty good job of making a name for yourself.
Yes,
and
sir.
You're 12 years old, and you've been hanging on with the girls. Even
Yes,
Jackie's
sir.
like, I'm ready to retire because I know this kid's coming up, and I don't want no part of her.
Yes, sir. It's been fun.
So, Marty, what's it like to be a coach/parent? What's kind of your teaching philosophies? Because you got two kids that are really making a name for themselves. And what I hear from, I called Ken Bray, I called Peyton, I talked to Jackie, I talked to a lot of different people. And everyone says the same thing. Both of these kids, their fundamentals are so correct. I thought it was really interesting with Tuftin. I don't know how long ago it was that he was still swinging his rope backwards.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And, also how many years ago too, where, I think going to a certain speed, it was still terrifying for him.
It was, yes.
But what I always heard was how patient you stay and how you just kind of just knew sooner or later they're going to get it.
Yeah.
And to me, how much of that almost relates also with your training, how much is horses that way? Or if you're, I think a lot of us as parents can get really, really, wanting to see them win. And then the words that we speak, not, being real careful about that, almost kind of getting in their heads and being a bad experience.
Right.
Where everything that I've heard, you did a good job of staying patient and then allowing it to happen.
I think it's so important. Like, I guess as a parent, you strive for that perfection all the time, but at the same time, the kids are they're gonna be at different points. Like between Tuftin and Bentley, Tuftin was a lot more reserved and laid back with certain parts of the roping, and then Bentley, she was just full steam ahead, and with Bentley,
two different personalities.
Two different personalities, and one I needed to speed up a little bit, and one I need to try to keep control and slow down just a hair.
Well, I remember Ken and Bray and I was talking about that. I had Ken Bray on the podcast, and we wanted to talk to Ken about Ken Bray, the father.
Yes.
Everyone knows the successful part and the successful role that he has in the industry, but you have one kid that made the NFR and another one that's going to be on his way.
Right.
I wanted to know what his teaching strategy was.
Exactly.
And that's one thing he said, Peyton, slow down.
Yep.
Wyatt, come on now, let's get going.
Come on, let's go.
Because it's a different personality, which is wild. They both grew up in the same house.
Yep.
Everything's the same, but there's always going to be those different personalities.
It is.
A lot of times it seems like.
That's right. That's right. And you see that in training horses too. Every horse is going to come along at a different pace too. And so with the kids, it's Tuftin, we just had to, he would get on a horse and very comfortable just walking and trotting along. And Bentley, she would obviously be going 9-0, but I told Tuftin, just as long as you're having fun, that's great with me. We can spend 4 years trotting along here and just go at your own pace. I didn't want to put something into him to where that would, to where we were trying to push too fast, and then all of a sudden it would deter him away from it. And
that burnout as well.
Exactly. And as we come along, I guess we went along for a little bit there, and then we went to a youth rodeo, and they just had some trotting Holsteins. And I remember a couple ropers before Tuftin rode in the box. He's over there, and I mean, he's white as a ghost. I don't think he was even breathing, he was just terrified. And we got him in the box, and he was on a real good, reliable horse, and he'd stand there and just wait for Tuftin to drop his hand. And he finally nodded his head after we talked him through it a little bit. I said, whenever you're ready, go ahead and nod your head. And I think he finally nodded your head, and then we talked a little bit longer after that. Well, whenever you're ready, go ahead and release your horse and go trot down there and rope the calf. And finally, he decides he's going to let him go, and he trotted down there and hung it on him down there at the bucket chutes, and got him a neck shot, and big old tears are coming down his face, and Heidi, she was down there at the back end, and he rode out of the back end, and he's like, Heidi said, that was an amazing job, and he said that was what was it? The
most terrifying
thing I'd ever done, and I ain't never doing it again. And
so Tuftin, let's hear your perspective. I'm sure you remember that first run.
Yeah, yes, sir, I do. I was definitely a little nervous. That speed was pretty fast for me then. Yes, sir.
So when you got him caught, what was kind of the feeling, and what was the emotion?
I was kind of just freaking out, honestly, just having to run down. Yes, sir.
Adrenaline was high.
Oh, yeah, it was. Yes, sir.
Nerves.
Yes, sir.
Feel like you're just in a jet and you're going faster than you can kind of control it?
A little bit, yes, sir.
So then, what after that, Marty? What was the run after that? And what was the run after that? And what changes did you start seeing?
So we went along like that just for a little bit of time frame, and then I remember we left for the summer and went up to Minnesota. We go up there to Heidi's parents' place every summer, and I do schools and lessons up there, and brought the kids over to one of the schools that day, and Tuftin, he got to roping with the students there along the way, and they had some good little Jersey calves, and he just got in the middle of some other kids, and I think that's what kind of really turned it around, didn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And
what do you think it was, Marty, with the other kids? What do you think that does?
I think you just see. I think like Tuftin, he was always could handle a rope really, really well. And it was just the riding part and getting comfortable on a horse. And he saw other kids doing all these steps. And then I think that just kind of loosened you up a little bit, didn't it?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And
so what did you feel, Tuftin, when you started competing with those other kids? What do you feel like started changing? Like your outlook, what was it? Competition? Was it, hey, I see those guys doing that, I can do that? What was it that kind of almost changed it where you wanted to try harder or continue to keep doing it?
A little bit of that, yeah. Trying to try harder and get up in that top group of them and stuff. Yes, sir.
I remember when I won. I remember when I entered my first dummy roping, and I hardly ever roped a dummy.
Yes, sir.
And I won second, and I don't know, I won like $5. Well, back then at the carnival, that would get you, a decent amount of rides, back then. And I was thinking, man, I hardly ever even rope.
Right.
And I won second.
Yeah.
Like first was 10, and like that would have gotten me a lot more rides. So like for me, that was like the competition to where it's like, all right, now where did I miss and where did that kid do good? Now can I pull that shot? And it was just one of those things that kind of stuck in my head to where it was like that competition kind of drove a little bit of like, oh, if I put some effort into it, I could actually do this. And as boys, I think boys are really wired for competition.
I think so too. And that leads into after we got back from the summer and Tuftin got kind of in with the kids there at the school. We entered one of Chris Neal's ropings up there at the Lazy E, and Tuftin, he roped through there, and I think you caught a couple in that roping.
Yes, sir.
And then the whole production of Chris's, that he puts on is so amazing for the kids. And so Tuftin didn't make the short round, obviously, but seeing how he presents the kids that made the short round with the smoke and the whole hype of everything, introducing them into the arena, taking their picture, the whole deal, making that whole production happen for the kids that in the short round. Tuftin watching that and then seeing the scale of them kids performing in the short round. I remember us leaving that day and we didn't even get back to the interstate from the Lazy and Tuftin's back there in the back seat. I can tell the wheels are turning, and he's like, I've got some work to do. I remember you saying that.
Yes, sir.
And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I got some work to do, and I'm gonna try harder, and I'm gonna work at my roping because I want to be there and in that short round.
So what did you see when you competed at that roping first? How did you do? And then what made that mind shift?
I did all right. I caught a couple of them. I was about a couple spots out. Then after seeing that short round, I just really wanted to be in it and stuff. I knew I needed to work at it to get there.
That's that competition.
That's that competition.
That's that being a boy and like,
yep.
All right. And then what happened after that?
We worked for a while. Then
what did you feel like needed to change? The fact you needed to get out in the practice pen more? What was it that when you said I need to work at this? Where did you start? What was it that you were working on?
Not feeling scared going that fast and stuff. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that is a tough one. That's a tough one because I think, in my opinion, a lot of times the speed, your brain's designed to keep you alive.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that's scared of heights knows that there's a certain amount of rungs you can get on that ladder before all of a sudden your feet quit moving.
That's right.
Because your brain knows at that point in time that if you go much higher, you're going to get hurt or you're going to die.
Yeah.
And I think your brain does the same thing roping.
For sure.
I think when you hit a certain speed, your brain is telling you, like, if I go much faster than this, if I fall off or something happens, I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah.
So it tightens you up. And can terrify you, the amount of things and go on. What were some of the things that when you were going that fast, when you were terrified, what were the things going on in your head?
I was kind of freezing up. I'm like, wow, we're really rolling through here. It was just, yes, sir.
Yeah, I remember bulldogging for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you would talk about some mental gymnastics.
Oh, my gosh.
I have to make my knee bend to chase this steer and get off of this horse that he's not doing anything wrong. Then I got to go tackle the steer, I remember the first time, like when I felt that fight or flight or that freeze was getting my knee to bend to actually create an easy shot to catch a steer.
Exactly.
And those are things that those things take time. It takes time to get comfortable, and it takes a lot of reps.
It does. Takes lots of reps and the right kind of reps. You don't just...
Where did you as a coach, where did you start seeing that? And how were you setting him up to start getting comfortable?
Well, just having the right kind of calves in front of him and just timing the saddle.
What do you mean by the right type of calves?
Just not overwhelming and Tuftin with too much
certain
speed. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
Just having them calves that are just nicely loping down through there to where he could get comfortable with his riding at that speed, plus still bringing along his fundamentals as far as his, him understanding how to ride to a position and rope the neck. All those steps need to still stay consistently involved in the run. And then along with just a lot of sled work, balancing the two out to where we weren't still going to, even though he kind of, got that burst of, well, this is what I need to work on. We're still not going to get ahead of ourselves and get doing too much. Like, we're not going to load a bunch of fresh beef calves in there and learn it overnight.
Right.
And that
you can get the reps in, but they're going to be the controlled reps.
Yep.
To be able to stair step each step.
That's right. That's right. And that's where I think it's important, no matter what level we're at, we need to always come back and slow things down to put things in perspective to where we can feel what our run's all about again, and then have a good mixture or balance of the two, with momentum and the controlled environment along the way. And that's what I did with Tuftin, just kept bringing him along like that. And then his confidence got growing more and more all the time. We got from, the barrier breaking before we left the
Probably
corner.
the back of the box. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. From the corner to, okay, we're getting closer to getting to our start. And next thing I knew, it was like, we're blowing the barrier out and we're full contact. It just like, whoa, where'd this all come from? But it was the point of just keeping the confidence, and that's where all kids are different. And we've got to keep that in mind, where as a coach, we got to make sure that they're always mounted the right way, and have that chance to bring them along to learn those fundamentals, and everything catches up. It's crazy how the full circle come around, like you were talking about, like with Jackie, and then me roping with the boys when they were my kids' age, 10, 11 years old. The full circle of that, how the foundation was built as we brought things along. And now that, Peyton Wyatt, they're 25, 26 years old, and my kids were at their age when I was helping them. Now you see, Jackie and Wyatt and Peyton, helping my kids along the way. It's pretty cool, but
that is fun.
It's the same fundamentals, the same basics that we all talk about. And I think that's so important, and taking the kids at stride. Like I've got all kinds of ages of kids come for lessons from just basically ground zero, learning how to swing a rope, understanding what kind of rope to use for equipment, to where it's working for you, not against you, to, slow trotting along or walking behind the sled. It all starts at a stage at the bottom, and then you build and grow it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've tried to do with my kids along the way, is just keep building fundamentals and working off our basics, because that's where the whole heart of our run is always surrounded by our basics.
Tuftin, after that jackpot, where did you start feeling some confidence? When did you start feeling to where, and what do you think, was it a certain amount of reps? When did you feel like all of a sudden you went from almost being borderline terrified,
yes, sir,
to now starting to see where everything slowed down and you started
yes,
seeing it come?
I'd say a couple weeks after that, just kind of doing some reps and just kind of start feeling like it's going to be okay. I won't go that fast and stuff.
Was it just almost overnight? Was it over one run? I know it might have been within 2 weeks, but what was it that you feel like all of a sudden you just felt like it just, oh, there it was. That's what they're talking about. And all of a sudden just showed up. Was there anything that because I remembered one time when I was a young kid and I caught my first steer, but like, I roped jerseys because they're the only thing when I was a young kid that was slow enough to kind of get my start. So that's probably where my neck shot came. Mm-hmm. But when I started roping steers, I kept splitting horns all the time. And I remember it because it was one of those things where I kept swinging my rope over the top of the horse's head, and then I'd throw out the right horn. And then I remember just watching Jake and Clay, I think, went the winning edge, and I would see how that swing would almost get out to the right a little bit more. And I would notice where my swing was kind of over the top. And then for whatever reason, I remember going to the practice pen and I moved my swing to where my swing was outside my horse's right ear. That was just that, like I said, that was what I saw. I just remember to this point, to this day, and all of a sudden my swing got out to the right of me, where my swing was out there on the other side of my horse's right ear. And then all of a sudden that loop just went on just as pretty as can be. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that again. Yeah. It was that one little thing where I remembered that one change, and then I was trying to keep it there. Was there anything like that where it was like that light bulb?
Probably a little bit, yes, sir.
Because that's what I see, I think, sometimes when it clicks. Yeah. Now can you remember it? Now can you do it again? Because it's always something. Because that's one thing I've seen in clinics is that everyone sees things differently.
Right.
You know, you got somebody that says, well, I focus on the base. I focus on the right horn. And then somebody might focus on the base of the left horn. You know, whatever it is, it's that what that person sees that helped create that shot. And that's why I always like it when, you know, you see somebody that makes that transition where all of a sudden it becomes easier. Was, what did you see? You know, what were you feel? What was the changes that you made? Because those are the little things I think for especially a lot of young kids, they're looking for that light bulb.
Yeah, they notice one or two little things here or there, and it just like frees them up and lets them go to that next level with it. Yep, totally.
So and how long ago was that? Probably 5 years ago, 4 years ago?
That's about 5 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So what does things look like now to this current day with where Tuftin's at?
I think the horsemanship has really gotten better. Understanding our left hand, you know, we still build the feel between our legs and our left hand, having that combination still stay connected. And I think the headings really helped Tuftin free up a lot. Because before we started roping too many steers, we roped the sled and stuff, you know, on the head and side of it a little bit and heeled a little bit, but we more or less roped calves. And the whole anticipation of, you know, the stop and all that kind of them scenarios in our run, we got to where it was taken away from our riding. We weren't riding and maintaining that into our runs enough. And so the heading really, I think, freed that up to where took the stop completely out of it and kept the fluid motion going. And I think that really helped Tuftin with his riding skills of just another roping event, learning how to maintain another lane versus the calf roping lane. And then his rope skills just followed with that, you know, accordingly to the adjustments of roping the horns or the neck. So, that part there, just basically timing the saddle, I think, is where, you really develop your horsemanship skills a lot is you got to go ride and learn the fundamentals of that part of it. And
so it looks like he's learning how to rope. You're obviously giving him the reps to be able to get the feel of riding because it takes reps to get feel.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think his mental game has changed?
Being able to, I think, rope himself into different stages and been on the stages that he's roped himself into is really, he's got seems like a real sound mind. He keeps his runs the same. Really proud of him on what he does there. He doesn't anticipate or try to look too far ahead on what he's gonna have a chance to rope for. We always preach roping one calf at a time. I think that's so important that we don't get ahead of ourselves there. And if we're in the second round, we're not roping the short round calf yet type scenario.
Yeah.
We keep one run at a time and keep all that in perspective.
One of the things that I had heard was, you know, how in a very short time being a little bit timid to now what I've heard is almost finding that dog in him. I've heard shows up early, comes like found that dog, like he wants to work at it.
We tie calves before school every day. We rope at night.
Who initiates that? You or him, or is it mutual?
It's mutual at some point, but Tuftin does a lot of it on his own. He's like, I want to tie. He wants a plan going the night before. He wants a plan what the next day is going to be about, how my lessons are scheduled through the day. Where do I fit in? Where's my time slot at? And, so he wants that plan so he knows what he can do as far as what horses can be rode or exercised or, when can I have a tying session? When's Peyton going to be, scheduled in to come tie with me? You know, he's very into that time slot and wants a plan. And
so that work ethic, Tuftin, what do you think creates that, this drive that you have? What do you think creates that?
Yeah, drives and just wanting it. Like, want to go out there and make her run the best we can.
How come you're wanting it so bad?
Just love doing it and stuff. Yes, sir.
Because that's one of the things that I've seen some kids where it's almost like the parents have to go get a hot shot to get them out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see some kids that you can't pull them off. So I always like to see what that mentality is, what that drive is, because the kid's got to have it. I think a lot of times too is I think the parents can create the love for it as well. But in the same sense, it has to be that decision for the kid, in my opinion.
That's right. I think there needs to be a real balance point there. If the kids aren't really wanting it, or they're just kind of going through the motions, but the parents want it worse, that's hard.
A key. That's a big one. Yeah,
that's a big one. I think it's hard to put that want in somebody. They've got to want to do it themselves. And when you have that drive and that want to, that's very rare. And when they have that, you got to be standing right there with them moving forward.
How hard is it, do you feel, between coaching and being a parent? That balance. And how do you balance it?
That can be tricky sometimes. But we step into the arena as a family. I'm not going to say we don't go back and forth a little bit and bicker back and forth about some stuff, but it's gotten really, really set up here, for a good while now. We step into the arena as a team, and kids, they know I'm their coach, and we work on stuff. And I still, set up stuff with Jackie, Payton, where they can go rope with other people too.
Get some different perspectives.
Exactly. It might be worded different, but same type of scenario. And I have no problem with that.
To me, that's, I think, very important to be able to take the ego out of the coaching side of things, and being understanding and willing to be able to, we could be saying the same thing and it's okay.
Yep.
As long as the message resonates.
Exactly.
And sometimes that is difficult, I think, is that, wanting to be right, or maybe the ego or whatever it is, and the frustration of just, it's your damn kid, he didn't make his bed, I think that can also translate and kind of carry on into the arena as well.
For sure. And we know that, hey, nothing's personal here. We're still in this all together. And, I get excited at times where, like I would have when I was doing it, and I don't want things to come off like I'm mad or anything like that. It's just, you get caught up in the moment, and I want them to realize that, hey, I'm just in the moment with you, and let's go get this done, or this is what we're working on. And, it's been a great ride, and we have a lot of fun together with it, and I think that's an important deal. We've been able to do it as a family.
Dustin, where do you feel like is some of the trying things, negatives, positives about, being the son and then having a parent/coach? Is there things that you see that sometimes are a little bit different than, say, like when you're getting coached by Jackie or Payton or things like that, or is it pretty darn close?
It's pretty dang close, I'd say.
That's pretty good then.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
I would say that's unique.
Yes, sure.
Because I think Jackie would even say it, and I've said it a lot of times too, is, parents a lot of times bring their kids to us because we're almost saying the same thing, but either the message is perceived differently or maybe it's said just a little bit differently.
Yep.
So to be able to have that at home, that is very unique, and that's
well, and I think you have that between, your own kids and a parent. I think it's sometimes, parent doesn't know what they're talking about. It's just kind of that little deal right there that happens. And so I'm taking them to somebody else. But like you say, it can be the same things being talked about. It's just not coming from dad or mom. And that, you run into all kinds of things like that. And I try to help the kids, my clients, that, hey, your dad was right. What he was telling you, you can listen to that. He's on the right track. It was just maybe said differently.
Yeah.
And then they can start rolling forward a little bit and maybe create more of a relationship between them in the arena,
So Bentley, I've heard you're just full throttle. You just hit the ground running, and this has always been something you've wanted to do, and they've had to basically keep the curb strap tighter on you as opposed to maybe, which is awesome. I think that it's so much fun to be able to kind of have two different, I have it, Creed, he's a little bit more, he doesn't get hurt much. He kind of sees everything, and then Journey, she's already just wanting to whip Big Red around, and, and so we see a lot of the similarities as well. But breakaway and Bentley, has it always been your passion? Has it always been what you've wanted to do?
Yeah, breakaway and barrel racing has always been what I want to do.
So when did you start roping?
I started roping when I was 4 or 5.
So basically, this is as soon as you almost could then.
Yeah. So when I could do it, I did it.
What were some of the girls and breakaway ropers that you looked up to?
Jackie and Tiata and Josie and them.
Those are some pretty good ones.
Yes, sir.
What are some of the things that you really watched and studied and liked about their roping?
I mean, how they swing a little bit different, and they all have their same different styles, and I like that.
So when did you start entering your first jackpots? Do you remember?
When I was 7 or 8, probably 7 or 8.
So that's pretty early.
Yes, sir.
Which is awesome.
Really, really, yeah.
What was your first jackpot like? You remember it?
I don't really remember it as good as Tuftin probably remembered his, but I think it was pretty good.
I remember mine. Nervous. Oh my gosh, shaking, sweating. It wasn't cold, it wasn't just that hot.
Yep.
Hands. I even remembered it the other day when I entered again. I entered the World Series finals. Started noticing the end of my finger started getting sweaty again.
Yeah.
And it was even kind of chilly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, where's this coming from?
It's amazing, those jitters and those things. To me, I always like hearing people's stories about when that all stopped.
Mm-hmm.
When you started getting comfortable. When did you feel like when you were competing that things started getting comfortable where you weren't getting nervous, you weren't getting sweaty, all those things that come to compete with learning how to compete?
Once I started settling in more and roping the neck, and I felt like I could do it.
Was it from reps and just being able to get comfortable catching, or was it wins that started getting you more comfortable?
Both. More catching and then more winning.
Sometimes just learning, once you start catching more, the winds kind of handle themselves, don't they?
I think so too. With kids and, when they're first getting started, I think it's a kind of a trying moment because, they're still not very tall and they're having to try to swing their rope over top of their horse's ears and all that kind of stuff. So it really hinders our angles and that kind of stuff, and then
I've seen a lot of bad habits created by starting to rope too early.
Yes.
The big swing, just all the things because you're so small and you're not as strong. And
yep.
I've seen some kids where they've learned to rope later and almost learned to do it correctly and then was almost able to excel, some of the ones that, had to work so hard at it because the angles were wrong.
That's right.
But I think also too is when you learn how to rope earlier, the speed doesn't affect you as much later. So
No.
it is a balance.
It's
isn't
a balance, and I think that's where there's some really good ponies out there nowadays. That the kids kind of get started on, or when you're roping on the ground, being on a platform, just being a little bit taller than your dummy, learning your angles, all that kind of stuff, and that's where. With Bentley, just noticing like she was so close and she's like, and I knew that burning desire was there to rope the neck every time. And it was just right there, but it's the part of just not being quite tall enough where her angles were just flat enough to where, it just wasn't quite getting that neck shot. And that's,
to me, for you knowing that for probably from the amount of coaching you've done in the past, to me, that I would have to say that has to help so much as a parent knowing it's going to come.
It's going to come.
It's going to come because I know what it's like to be that young. I know I know the stages to where then you're not almost putting the more pressure on or getting the frustration part because you as a coach has already been there. You know the evolution and the time it's going to take where you can almost be them and let them like, look, I know it's not where you want, but trust me, you're going to get there.
You're going to get there.
As opposed to where I've also seen it where some of the parents come down. I'm like, I can't believe, it is. And well, then that creates the animosity. Yep. That creates they don't want to listen. Then it creates also what you have to be real careful of too is putting those demons in their head early.
That's right.
Then they start thinking of the wrong things at the wrong time and it carries.
It carries.
Those are the scars they almost carry a lot later in life.
Well,
too.
and there's enough going on at the time with not catching you don't want to add more to it, and I remember roping with Peyton and Wyatt, when they were 10, 11 years old, they, me and Ken had all kinds of conversations all the time, and we'd try to keep balancing it out. I'm like, look, we just need to make sure that we allow all this to keep catching up. It's going to get there. And then all of a sudden the boys started getting a little taller and a little bit stronger. Well, then all of a sudden.
Now we're dealing with 6'2" and 6'7".
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see the swings get stronger. There's not as much labor in there. The angles become more truer. The riding's more in play. It all catches up. So I got a really good base off of, roping with the boys back then, and lots of conversations with Ken along the way. Yeah. So then with my own kids,
kind of carried over.
It carried over. And we just, the hardest part is to try to have a conversation with your kids, to let them know that a miss is okay. And I don't want to get it to the point where, we're trying to, do off the wall things just to catch the neck or our target in general. Right.
Yeah.
And
because for me, it's not always about the outcome. It's what created the outcome. Like I said, did we miss our start? Okay. Like we'll get a better start. Shot will be easier, and for me, missing was never really that big of a deal as long as it wasn't like, a mental error.
That's right.
That created it. But even then it's a learning process. One of the biggest things like Jackie and I talk about is, here's one thing you can control, and that is your attitude. Yeah. That was always a big one for us. And, with Bentley, watching her, Jackie, I talked to her today, and she's like, this girl's 12 and she's hanging with the big dogs. Yeah. Like she's hanging with the big girls. And, to be able to have that compliment from Jackie is got to feel pretty good. But you got recently to go and compete with the big dogs.
Yes, sir.
So you got to go to the Kimes $1 Million Breakaway. Qualified. So did you guys go to Oklahoma?
We went to Oklahoma
and didn't get qualified there, correct?
Just outside of getting qualified there.
So then you went to the last chance qualifier in Scottsdale.
Yep.
Didn't make it there either, correct?
Didn't make it there either.
So then you enter the buybacks, which anyone knows the buybacks, that is the toughest one to come out on.
It is. It is.
And how did that turn out?
How did it turn out, Ben?
Oh, well, I guess we had a really good run there. We were 2-4, and I think second was like 248, and I was 247.
So you won the buyback?
Yes, won the buyback.
How cool did that feel?
Oh, it was amazing, roping against all them girls that they're professionals. And
so what was it like roping against them at Oklahoma and at the last chance qualifier? What was that like?
It was pretty cool roping against the pros, and I mean, I was only 11 when I did it, and it was cool.
Did you feel like your competition changed at all when you competed against those girls, as opposed to maybe some of the junior events that you rope at, or maybe even practice? Did it feel the same, or did it feel different?
Felt a little bit different than practicing. And
what was the difference, do you feel like?
I mean, you had to be faster in the pros, and you had to score, and you had to come across there and make sure you had your tip down and rope the neck.
One of the things that was funny about, like, when I was a kid, I roped against the older guys my whole life. Team roping, most of the older guys always were in the jackpots. So when I grew up roping, I grew up against guys that, were my dad's age at all times. Then he hauled me around to the amateur rodeos, and I got to where I was placing at the amateur rodeos. I think I made the amateur finals before I made the high school finals.
Yep.
And then I get to high school, and I was nervous. I had never at that time roped against anybody of my peers, never roped against anybody my own age.
Right.
And roped terrible. Well, I remember it. I barely made the state finals and didn't even make the high school finals my first year. Completely laid eggs, completely I couldn't get the mental side of it down to where I know how to catch. I just couldn't catch there.
Right.
Was not consistent because I was so nervous. And I remember me and BJ Campbell, we won the open roping against all the guys when I was, I think, a sophomore or junior. Dee Pickett, Mike Beers, Leo Camarillo was there. And what I've found was when I would get around the guys that roped better than me, my competition actually got better. My ability got better. Like for whatever reason, I elevated with the competition, but then when I would, when the competition would lower, I would find my performance lowering.
Yep.
So like when she's talking about competing against those, and then all of a sudden when it was time to bring the dog out, in the buybacks, and then just wears them out.
Take it to
had to feel pretty good.
Yes, sir, it did.
And that's where, Bentley, she's always been freewheeling, no hold back in her. Went through the, when she roped in the 10 and under, I always entered her in the 12. I always entered her up one. And for two reasons, she could handle that. It wasn't overwhelming to the point where I was putting too much in front of her. But she could handle the two stages, but it was also at the same time, she was getting more runs in competition. And so then as we went along and we slowly stepped out of the 10 and under, I would put her in the 15. And when we were just straightly in the 12, and just kept kind of inching her like that, putting more cattle in, or more speed in front of her. And so she was getting more comfortable with that process as we went. And then also, like you were saying, she was roping against a different group of girls. And I was wanting to almost, get her stages built up to where she was roping up, but yet in with another group of girls. And so now she's had that opportunity as we've brought her along to be able to go into the 12, go into the 15, into the 19, and then have that opportunity to rope with the open girls also, and not think that anything different. We still have to score, set our runs up, and rope the net.
So when you got to rope in the top 80, this is the top 80 girls, this is now where it really tightens up. Well, how did the top 80 semifinals go?
It went good. I drew two calves that were too fast to be fast on. And I drew one good one, and he slowed up right when I roped him, so I was too long. So I didn't make it back in that.
So then when you left the Kimes $1 million breakaway, did you guys go out to Vegas?
No,
we were still finishing up with the rest of
there's other youth events there.
Yep,
I forgot about
Chris's
that.
youth.
That's right.
Youth ropings were on at the same time. Yep.
So when you got done roping against the top girls and you got to rope in the youth events, did it feel easier? Was there like pressure off? Did you feel like you competed better because you were, that's almost like creating a diamond. It takes a lot of pressure. You got a lot of pressure put on you. So then when you went and competed against the ropings you were used to, did you feel like it elevated you? What did the ropings feel like after that?
It felt different. I mean, you're going from roping beef calves to jerseys, so you got to level off and you got to rope them. And I won around in the 12 and under breakaway, and then I roped good in the 15 under. I was a little too slow to make it back, and then the 19 I did good. We didn't draw the best in the 19, so it didn't.
Did you feel like your confidence was higher going to that than ever before?
Yes, sir.
I'll bet it was. And you talked about the difference between beef calves and jersey calves. Explain the difference there.
You gotta score. You gotta score both ways, but you gotta level off more when you rope jerseys. And you can't tell the calves what to do. They're always gonna have what they want to do. And I've always liked roping beef calves than jerseys. And at the house we don't have any beef calves. We just run jerseys, but we don't rope jerseys. We rope jerseys. We don't rope calves a lot, and we rope the dummy more than anything.
So your beef calves, they tend to be stronger.
Yes, sir.
And then your jersey calves tend to be a little bit slower. So that's a different swing. It's a different timing, different feel. When you're talking about the beef calves, they're going to be running. They're going to be further out there. Your angle, your swing is going to be different. Where the calf's neck a lot of times is going to be different, and where you throw is going to be different. As opposed to when you're gaining on probably a jersey calf, tip's going to be a different spot. Yeah. Left hand's going to be working differently because you're probably going to be rating and things like that. So, yeah, it's a lot. I can definitely see where the setups are definitely different.
The setups are definitely different. Like Bentley was saying, we rope some jerseys at home to where we can build on and have time to adjust to things and build a middle and long game in our run by coming in and being able to swing over one's back 4 or 5 times and feel those fundamentals.
Because those are things that's going to carry, at 12 her getting to butt heads with the best girls in the world, her getting to get exposed to what it's like to run those big, strong calves at a very high level, and then also back and back down roping in a roping with her age that's basically setting a run up on a slower calf. And you think about all year long, those are all setups. You think about like Puyallup, those are at the end of the year in September. Puyallup's a big deal.
Big deal.
And that's a little arena. It's at the end of the year. Those calves start getting dirty. They start getting tricky. And you might be in the final four and a barrier might be winning it.
That's right.
And so when you're going down talking about all these different scenarios and ropings that you're roping in, learning how to rope that slow calf, learning how to rope that one that slows off. And then also, you're basically roping throughout the year when the calves are stronger and they're out there in front, learn how to reach at them. And so, yeah, it's fun to watch when you're training those kids and being able to keep things in perspective of what you're training them for, because there's going to be all those scenarios when they get to the upper level.
And I think bringing that along with them foundations in the ropers is, like Bentley, she come across there and always look for that two swings. She liked to go at them, but we're working on more of a middle and long game also. I think it's important that we develop the three, so we have a long, middle, and short game. Yeah. Because like you said, throughout the course of the year, there's all kinds of different setups you go to. There's slow calves, there's fast calves, there's, it's all going to be all over the board. And we don't want to get caught just having one game. We want to have all three so we can adjust to different setups and still give ourselves a chance to be in the middle of it.
Well, and that's the consistency. When you're trying to think of consistency, that's what wins long term.
It does.
The basically the run rope you have in your bag, you're hoping that setup fits that run. And, that's very hard to win consistently that way. So it's really good, really good teaching philosophy.
And the other thing too is, we don't have to win first every day. There's a lot of fourth and fifth place checks along as you go through the year that add up just as fast as one first place check every now and again.
Absolutely.
And that's what try to help the kids understand that, yes, we're there to do the best we can, and winning first is amazing, but we also need to learn to rope accordingly to what we draw that day and win what we can. And it's crazy to even say this, but as we've gotten started in the youth world, as the kids got to the point where we could start going to the ropings and that, there was always like 4 or 5 places going in short rounds that might only make it back on 2, and the rest were on 3. And then we go through say another year and a half, you could watch all the kids start getting more consistent. And then all of a sudden, it's like nobody makes it back to the short round without having all their calves caught. And then now the last couple of years, it's like a knife fight, like from the 10 and under up. It's like, whoa, we noticed this at the pro level, but now you're seeing it at this youth level at that age, to where the draw is what's determined who's going to win that day, because they're so consistent and they're spot on, and it's so neat to see. And I think it's just the part that I see in my clients and my own kids, to where we're building those basics. We're building them fundamentals along the way to have that consistency of being able to learn how to score, hit the barrier, and be able to set those runs up, read cattle. All that comes into play. And I think it all resorts back to taking all the pressure off of our runs to where we're not just caught up in momentum. We're caught up in understanding how it's developed at a slower pace. So when we do step into the arena across the line, we're able to read and react to it and adjust to our runs.
Well, and to think too of what this is going to look like in 5-10 years.
Oh, my gosh.
When you're talking about how tough these events are getting at that young age, think about what that's going to be at the top, in 5 to 10 years. And it's exciting.
It's very exciting.
So kids, I'd love to ask you guys what your guys' goals are. What's your dreams? So Bentley, I know when yours and Tuftin, I'll bet it is probably pretty similar, but when I was a young kid, man, I just wanted to see the bright lights of Vegas.
Yeah.
I wanted to see what the NFR looked like. And so Bentley, what is your dreams and what is your goals when you get grown up?
My goals are to make the breakaway in the national finals and go in the barrel racing and the breakaway. And I want to win the world a couple times in barrels and breakaway. And those are kind of my goals. And then in my youth right now, I want to go win a couple, like the 12 and under at Making Sherilyn Johnson's and the 15 and the 19. And then at the Junior World Finals at, I want to win the 12 and unders and the 15 and the 19.
So not much.
Not much.
Not much. Not much of a goal at all. I love it.
I love it.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I know what Jackie talks very highly of you, and you got a very bright future, and it's gonna be fun to watch.
Thank you.
Tuftin, what is your goals?
Mine are pretty similar to hers. Try to get to the finals and
What events?
probably calf roping, maybe probably team roping too.
What side?
Probably heading.
Gonna head.
Yes, sure.
Awesome. The healers are the ones that get all the glory.
Yep.
The headers are kind of like the quarterbacks. You throw the touchdown pass, but you just get to watch wide receivers do all the celebrating.
Do all the celebrating, exactly.
Get out good and get them turned out good, and Junior gets all the credit for rearing back.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
But yes, the money is won on the head side, and a lot of times because the thing I love the most about heading, I got to throw every time.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I love that part.
Always got a chance.
Yeah, and I love the fact that the pressure was on me to be able to set the run up.
Yep.
I enjoyed that part of it. That fit my personality.
Yep.
So between that and calf roping, that's pretty good. You're in charge of a lot of things.
Yeah, you really are. You really are. And I think that's a good balance to figure out where you lie to be more effective.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
like you said. I think Tuftin, the way he goes about his runs, you really see a lot of that in his calf roping. He's one-on-one right there and controls his part of it and then same in the heading. He really has a good feel of his scoring and understands how to set it up and is developing that part of it just like his calf roping. So I think those two go really hand in hand. Myself, I enjoyed the calf roping part of it. It was just me. Mm-hmm. And it took a lot once I got into the full steam of it.
Event. That's a tough
for the team side of it, and the partnership of it all. Mm-hmm. Because I was by myself for so long.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But like you said, being a header, you always got that chance to throw your rope and control what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I guess my passion was on the heeling side. And I should have maybe switched over through a course of the time to go to that side of it. But I just had such a passion in the heeling side of it, I just never did.
Yeah, and you're good at it. That does help. But well, man, I really enjoyed your teaching philosophies. This was a fun practice or a fun podcast and talking about so many different things and elements and training and having the kids on here. I thought that was a fun perspective to get to hear a parent, coach, have the kids on and get their perspective. That was fun. I really enjoyed that. But so anyone looking for lessons, clinics, how do we get a hold of you? What are some things that you have out there that people will be able to get a hold of you?
Go on Facebook on Becker Performance Horses. We have all our information on there, and so you can get a hold of us right there. And we do privates at home all the time right here in Morgan Mill and
Morgan Mill, Texas.
Morgan Mill, Texas, and then also I'm always traveling around doing schools outside the state also. So yeah, just contact us that way. And
email or anything, or just Facebook?
Facebook, and then Heidi's got her email on there also.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I'll be able to get on Facebook, find the emails, phone numbers, all that stuff, be able to get hold of you that way.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Well, man, I appreciate it. And guys, kids, do good, man. I'm excited to watch.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys coming on.
Appreciate it, Charlie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.